This is Michael Reagan, and you're listening to the Break It Down Show.
Holy cow, man. This is super cool. Well, first off, you're standing in front of a picture of you and the champ Muhammad Ali. We were just talking about that off mic. That is pretty cool. And then you told me about championship boat racing on Lake Havasu. I would love to find out about that. You have lived a fascinating life, man.
Well, you know what happens when your parents are so famous? I mean, my mother was Jane Wyman, Academy Award-winning actress, nominated 3 times, Golden Globe winner 4 times. You know, she has 2 stars in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She has her handprints and footprints of Grauman's Chinese. And I told you, I said, only 2 people in the world were ever born and or raised in a family, because I was adopted, you know, in a family where the mother would go on to become an Academy Award-winning actress and the father would go on to become president of the United States. Nobody else lived that life except for myself and my sister Maureen, who passed away, you know, at 60 years old in 2001. So it doesn't really matter what you do. You are so overshadowed by their personalities and their person that, so when you say, hey, I've won 5 world championships, you know, I've set records on 5 lakes, I've done whatever, they go, really? You go, yeah, I've really actually done that. And they look at you with their eyes crossed because they've never heard about it. They don't know about it. We're the single largest fundraiser of the United States Olympic team back in the 1980s. I raced a boat from New Orleans to St. Louis on the Mississippi River. Did in a little under 25 hours, and we raised, you know, I think $500,000 in that day for the United States Olympic team. And then we went out, we set a record for cystic fibrosis between Ketchikan, Alaska and Seattle, largest fundraiser they ever had, $250,000. We raced on the Great Lakes from Chicago to Detroit, raised money for the United States Olympic team. We did for juvenile diabetes on another Great Lake. Then from Miami to New York, we didn't make it to New York. We broke down, but we still raised $50,000 for the Statue of Liberty Restoration Fund. So again, you're doing these things, and at the same time, I'm married, got 2 kids, I'm happy, 45 years of marriage. They go like, yeah, but what do you do?
Yeah. Well, let me ask a couple more questions too. Is this interesting? One, I feel like we had Lorenzo Lamas on the show, and there's some kind of connection there too, right? Like you guys are somehow tied to Lorenzo in your family?
Well, Lorenzo is interesting because Lorenzo played my mother's grandson on Falcon Crest.
Right.
And so I would see him, but I actually did 4 or 5 Falcon Crests for my mother. I came home from work one day, I was selling boats, and I was at home and the phone rang, and you picked it up and you shouldn't have. And I pick it up and my mother says to me, what are you doing? I said, well, I stopped off for lunch. But what are you doing in the next couple hours? And why? I really don't know. She says, I need a concierge. I said, excuse me, you need a what? I said, I need a concierge. Where do you need a concierge? Well, you know, I've got the television show Falcon Crest, and I'm opening up a spa, and I need a concierge for the spa. Would you come over and play the concierge? So I drive over. She says, by the way, put on a suit before you come over. Put on a suit, and I ended up doing 4 or 5, you know, shows with my mom, which are great, over at CBS, and met, of course, Lorenzo, and if you will. And Lorenzo said to me one day, said, you know, on the show, you know, your mother has a tendency to look at me sometimes in a scene that really scares me. And I said, Lorenzo, I've been looking at that same face all of my life. She practiced that look on me. I knew when I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I had a great mom. I had really great mom. Jane was unbelievable, and we lost her back in 2007. But she was a great lady. And interesting enough, his first marriage was to my dad, Ronald Reagan, and his first marriage. And what was interesting, she never said a word. In fact, in her contract with the studio, she said, you know, if I'm ever asked a question about my first husband, I will get up and walk away. I'm not here to talk about, you know, the president. I'm here to talk about the show. And she never said a word, positive, negative at all, about my dad until the day that we laid him to rest. And then she simply said, America and the world lost a great man.
Yeah.
That was the woman she was.
Yeah. Is it possible to be that woman still today?
I don't know. No, with all the media out there, TMZ, of course,
Right.
and everybody out there, it's real. I think it's really tough. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to have people like
Yeah.
that, but we live in this world today where things are so immediate. People don't talk; they yell, point fingers, and what have you. So even my dad, over his gravesite at the library in Simi Valley, what does he say? In every man there is good.
Yeah.
Find the good. We're not looking for the good now. And that's what's sad. We're not looking for the good. And he always looked for the good. And that was what the great things about my father. He made friends out of enemies, not enemies out of friends. And I remember at the funeral of my father, sitting behind me was Mikhail Gorbachev. And our kids just, turned around and saw him and said, it's Mikhail Gorbachev sitting behind us. And it was. Mikhail Gorbachev went and spoke at Eureka College a few years after that to the Reagan Society at Eureka College when he was asked to do that. It was a different world, a different time at that point in time. And what's missing today is we don't have that cadre of leaders. We don't have the Margaret Thatchers, the Lech Walenses, the Václav Havels, Mikhail Gorbachevs. Go down the line. The Ronald Reagans. That cadre of world leaders who didn't care about who got the credit. They just wanted to get the job done.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to bring up one more person that I think is interesting in terms of our conversation today. Is we had Frank Stallone on the show as well. And Frank had a similar experience that you had. He had this, he's one of those people that was just touched by God. Like, now I know how to be a musician. And like, he instantly knew how to play the guitar and like just a download. And that's how he describes it. And he's like, I had this career. My brother was carrying our gear as we toured around, the city, and we were doing it. We were, getting a deal and everything. And all of a sudden just got snatched up by a rocket. And his hopes, his dreams all became secondary and always, attributed to his brother's success.
It's interesting. You talk about Sylvester Stallone, Frank Stallone's brother. But Sylvester Stallone, interesting enough, when I was racing boats, getting ready to do a boat race from Miami, New York for the Statue of Liberty Foundation, I always made it, a rule that I spent the last 24 hours before I got in the race boat to go 100 miles an hour, 38-foot Scarab offshore, 3 V8 outboards on the back, 430 horsepower apiece, spent it with my family before I got in that rocket myself and decided to go anywhere. And I got hired to do a movie, Over the Top, with Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
And I was hired to be the guy that would buy the truck, that would give him the money to get into the arm wrestling championship. And so I told him, I said, I've got a boat race coming. I'm on a certain schedule of time. I can't really change it. Don't worry. We'll take care of it, Mr. Reagan. And I'm going, this is Hollywood. They never take care of it, but okay.
Right.
So they fly me to Las Vegas, put me in a room for the day. And then that time comes, I'm supposed to go out to the desert. Stallone comes up to me. I, give him the money for the truck and so on. As Stallone gets to me, the sun goes down behind the mountain. And they said, we can't do it. The sun went down. We don't have a shot. We have to do it tomorrow. I said, wait a minute. Tomorrow? I've still got to be in Miami Beach. And come on, guys. And so they talked to me. I said, okay. I called my wife, who's not really happy at that, because we kind of knew this might happen. And so I spend the night. Next day I get up, they put me in the same room. I'm there about the same time in the afternoon. They come get me, put me out in the desert. Sure enough, sun goes down. But Stallone isn't there yet. They said, we have to do it tomorrow. I said, there's no tomorrow for me. I'm going home, take me to the airport. I'm leaving, find somebody else. They said, nobody's ever walked off a Sylvester Stallone movie.
Yes.
And you'll be the first. I said, well, then I'm the first. Well, you tell Mr. Stallone. So they drive me over to where he is, ending filming a shot, and he's coming out from that. There's crowds around because it's Sylvester Stallone, right? And if Stallone's walking towards me, I'm walking towards him, and we meet in the center, and his manager's next to me, and his agent says, you tell Mr. Stallone what you told me. So I still said to Sylvester, hey, my family's more important to this movie. I'm going to drive a boat from, Miami to New York in 48 hours. I have to be in Miami, and I promised my family I'd be with them before I stepped in this boat. And so I'm going home. I'm sorry. My family's more important than your movie.
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone looks at me and he says, you know something? I wish I would have made that decision 20 years ago. And he said, don't you worry, because you will get residuals from this movie as long as it runs, and your name will be in the credits. So if you're ever watching that movie and you look at the credits, you'll see Michael Reagan. Somebody else bought the truck. I was on my way to Miami Beach, but I still get residuals, the penny I get, from that movie, because Sylvester Stallone said, thank you. I wish I would have made the same decision.
What a great story, man. I love that. You're talking about over the top and you know, it's wow, man. That is incredible. And thanks for telling it. It's just I'm tickled by these great encounters. But you're right. You've been in this. A friend of mine is Roger Clinton. We might even do a podcast together. Matter of fact, I owe him a phone call today. Mm-hmm. And he's another guy. He's like, you know, I didn't sign on to be in this life, you know, but I'm in it. You know,
it is what it is. You have to just say, okay,
yeah.
or what do? Just walk around angry all of your life?
Yeah.
And my kids even go through it. You know, Cameron and Ashley, you know, they still go through it. It's like, you know, why do they need a job? Their grandparents are Ronald Reagan and Jane Wyman. Well, maybe because we were all raised to work for a living. You know, when my dad became governor of the state of California, I was on a trucking dock in L.A., loading oil well freight from 5 at night to 1:30 in the morning. And people in the dock used to sit there and say, your parents really don't love you. I said, well, no, they do. Well, my dad was going to be governor of the state of California. I wouldn't be working on no trucking dock. You know, but again, that's how we were raised. You know, when I was in college, I got a job washing cars at a car wash. You know, when people would question, or my daughter, you know, who's a teacher, teaches kindergarten. Not easy right now, you know. And what have you, you know, why do you need a job? And it's because we were all raised. I tell people, I said, my parents were born with a birth defect. It was called a work ethic, and they kind of passed that on down to the family. You want anything, you got to work for it. So there you go.
When I ask you, what was the hardest day working of your life? What do you say to that?
Driving 272 miles a day, every day, for almost a year from Los Angeles to San Diego to kick off a national radio talk show. I did it every day, and my first paycheck from that national show was a Green Bay Packers baseball cap, which I still have, because they had no money, and they had done a video, a television show, whatever, where they were selling baseball caps. They still had one left over, and that replaced the paycheck I would have gotten. And I called my mother on the phone, driving down to San Diego. And I said, Mom, you know, we got your 2 grandchildren, my wife, what have you. Things are a little tight because I'm not getting paid. I'm trying to kick the show off. I'm driving 272 miles a day. Can you help me out? She said, yes. I said, thank God. What can you do? She said, I can tell you this. Shut up and keep driving. And she hung up on me. She hung up on me. I went like, whoa, what do you mean? And I said, I called her back. I said, did you hang up on me? She said, yes. I said, why'd you hang up on me? She said, so somebody die and say you didn't have to pay your dues like everybody else?
Yeah.
Everybody has to pay their dues. If I give you what you need or what you want, and you become a success, who gets the credit?
Yeah.
You are the ones who take the credit. So what I'm telling you is, my advice is, shut up and keep driving. And she hung up again. And that radio show, I got replaced by Rush Limbaugh in San Diego. I was one of those guys, like, on Friday I had a job, Monday I was told you don't have a job.
Yeah, so that's radio for
my thought, do unto others before they do it to you again. So that's why I started an actual show. But that show that I shut up and kept on driving lasted 19 years. Until I walked off the air myself in 2009.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you do then? What do you call your job on a day-to-day basis now?
Well, now what I used to go out and speak all the time. You know, it was Reagan country, now it's Trump country. So I'm not a Trump, I'm a Reagan. type thing. So I would, from 2009 to about 2015, I was out 40 times a year speaking all kinds of different groups. And I was writing. I've written like 8 books.
Right.
A couple of them bestsellers. And so I've done that, spoken on those issues with those books, things I went through and had to deal with as a child and what have you. I do columns. I write a couple of columns every week. One goes to the national newspapers and the other one goes to Newsmax. So I'm a contributor to Newsmax Television. I'm on there a couple of times a week, plus I write a column or 2 for them each and every week. And that keeps me pretty busy. Along with that, my wife and I have a foundation that we started early 2000s when they christened my father's ship, the USS Ronald Reagan, the most awesome aircraft carrier on the planet, which is now stationed in Tokyo, Japan, keeping an eye on North Korea, if you will. And we put together a program to help the sailors on board the USS Ronald Reagan by providing scholarships to those sailors who live on the ship and are on the ship, $1,000 each sailor who puts in for the scholarship. But we also do something different. We also give $2,000 to a family member who is left home while their loved one is on that ship, saving the world. If they're trying to better their education, to better themselves, they can put in for a scholarship also. And we send them $2,000. And we just sent some checks off here a couple of weeks ago to the Reagan.
Well, that's huge work. I'm glad you brought up the work. And this is through the Reagan Legacy Foundation that you do this. Is that correct?
Through the Reagan Legacy Foundation, we started that early 2000s, if you will, doing those things with the USS Ronald Reagan, which we still do today. And last year, it's been a little hard catching up with the Reagan because she's been really busy over in that area of the world because of all the things going on. But we caught up with her and able to get the checks out. And then a few years ago, I was invited to go to Normandy, France, to raise the flag at the American Cemetery at Normandy. I was playing golf with a 28-year-old kid. Lives over by where I live. Actually managed a restaurant over by where I live. And we're playing golf. Never met him before, but we're on the golf course. And you're talking about what do you do, back and forth. And I said to him, I said, I'm leaving tomorrow for Paris, France. Oh, why are you going there? I said, well, I'm going out to Normandy on Saturday, and I'm raising the American flag at Normandy on Sunday morning. And this 28-year-old kid looks at me and says, why is there an American cemetery at Normandy?
Oh,
and I looked at him, I said, that's exactly what I said. I said, did you think D-Day is when your report card came home from school? I mean, I had no concept, no idea why there was an American cemetery at Normandy. So I can explain to him World War II and D-Day and all of these things going on. So I went over there and visited St. Mary Glees.
Yeah.
For those of you who have seen Saving Private Ryan, all the paratroopers, that's kind of where they were headed. That's where the bridges were. Or if you ever saw The Longest Day, the movie was in St. Mary Glees. That's where the paratroopers were, red buttons hanging from a church steeple, if you will. And went up there and visited, just fell in love with that town. And by the way, you can't buy a drink in that town if you're an American. I mean,
that is true.
Treat you right. And so I'm up there, and I said, what can I do to help you? And so they were talking about increasing, putting in another building, doing some other things. And so we got involved to help them build a new building where you can walk into a glider, if you will, and get the feeling of what the glider was like as they were coming in on D-Day. We helped them with that building. We set up a Ronald Reagan Center there to have conferences on freedom after that. And he said, well, what else can we do? So how about we remember these soldiers who fought in the Second World War and World War II? Why don't we do a brick project where people can go online and purchase a brick and put the name of a loved one and when they served in the World War II and brick in the walkways there they're in St. Mary Glees working with them. And they thought, God, can we do that? I said, why not? So we started the process about 2 years ago, and we've been bricking it in. We have 300 bricks there right now waiting to be put in. But of course, with the virus, they're waiting also there
Yeah.
to put in. But again, with Memorial Day, VE Day, all these things coming on, those people were really the first responders.
Yeah.
If you really think about that, they were the first responders back there in World War II. And to put their names on these bricks and lay them, but even more so, when one of them walks by it and sees their name in a brick, they just break. I cry just thinking about it. I see them. And what I tell people, I say, a lot of people don't know someone who served. They don't have a grandfather or a father who served in World War II. But we have enough names. We work with a lot of people. And if you send a donation to the Reagan Legacy Foundation, you go reaganlegacyfoundation.org. You can go there. You can send a check in the memo, put brick project, $250 for a brick or $500 for a bigger one. And then we'll put the name of someone who served, and then you'll get all the information on that person. So you will really have a feeling, because now you'll know that person. You'll know who they are, where they served, what they did in World War II. And you'll be the keeper, if you will, of the copy of that brick. So we started that about 2 years ago, and just love working with them at the Airborne Museum, greatest people in the world there, and to actually talk to people who were there on D-Day, Henri Jean, or the brothers who were like itty bitty children watching D-Day happen right before their eyes. Or their father was the D-Day mayor, and to sit there and talk to them. They gave myself and one of my board members a cutting from one of the parachutes a couple of years ago when we were there. And we tried to go back now every year. We wanted to go back this year, of course, but this year is not going to work.
Right.
But it is the 76th anniversary. But again, we go there every year now and just love going there, visiting with the people, and just hearing the history of that area of the world and what they did. And when you see it, I mean, you hear the story, but when you actually go to Point de Hoc and go, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
You've got to be kidding me.
It's this part of history is well, they're dying off. And actually, you'll appreciate this. On Friday, 2 days from now, Henry Longer is a paratrooper from World War II. Mm-hmm. He wrote what's about to be a best-selling book. The book just came out. He wrote it with a guy named Jim DeFelice, who's written a bunch of other books with World War II guys. His last book was about a medic who was in the first wave, ramp falls, instantly gets shot, and that medic spent the rest of his time in the war helping people. Those Higgins boats, when the door came down and pinned him under, he's like, well, I'm going to die. And then for some reason, the Higgins boat lifts up, backs up. He gets out somehow, broke his back. Like, this is an impossible story. So anyhow, now he's written another book with this guy, Henry. And he was a paratrooper who fell into St. Mary Glees. And in the book, he's like, there's my buddy Ricky hanging from the steeple. Like, he talks about his life as he goes through these moments that we all see in the movies. He was there, It's incredible when he talks about, I knew that guy, we had drinks and he was there and he was, all these incredible things. It's just remarkable that we still have enough of these guys with us. We had a guy named Chet Rohn who went to that. Basically, he was D-Day plus 6 months. And so it's like December, he goes across the channel in his half track and they're like, head to the Battle of the Bulge, like just straight into it. And we got to send him back to the Battle of the Bulge for the 75th this winter. And it's just remarkable to hear these guys' stories. And I can't get enough of telling, like, especially when they're able to put them on. We had one of the guys who survived the USS Indianapolis has been on the show. He was from the town that I grew up in. He was like cop badge number 1. And, just have these incredible, incredible stories. He talks about, there I am on the ship. It's hot down below. So we're sleeping on the deck. And then the torpedo hits. I look and I see my shoes fall off of the boat, like just crystal clear memories. And it's just, they truly are the greatest generation to go through what they did. To take, look at how much we're struggling with, and I'm not trying to undermine the virus, but look how much we struggle with the virus and a president that's problematic. And we think it's the toughest of days. Like, no, we've had way bigger problems in our nation and in the world.
Oh, we have. And somehow we've always found a way to solve them. What did my dad say? Because we're Americans. And we figure it out. The paratroopers who all landed in the places they weren't supposed to land on D-Day, figured it out, and were able to really, pull it all together to do exactly, what they did, whether it's the, 501 or whoever it might have been, just to sit there and watch it. A lot of people don't realize also my father was the first president to actually go to Normandy on D-Day.
I didn't know that.
He was on the 40th anniversary of D-Day. He went there and gave that famous Point to Hawk speech. He actually gave 3 speeches that day, but everybody remembers the Point to Hawk speech. But he was the first president to actually go on D-Day, and those kids, the 17 and 18-year-olds who are now in their 90s, have never forgotten that. Never forgotten that. I mean, I can't walk through a room of those guys and get to the other side because they all remember that. And it was just a great moment. Of course, since then, every president's been there on D-Day, whether it's, of course, this president hasn't been there yet, I don't think, on D-Day, but yes, he was. He was there on D-Day.
He read a blurb about the medic who was telling
Clinton was there, and Obama was there. Everybody who's followed my dad has gone there on D-Day. So I'm really glad, and they're really glad my dad started that process to say this is an important place. This really is. It's so important. I remember because we also sponsor some of these guys to go back to those anniversaries, which are now every 5 years instead of 10 years, because they're dying off so quickly. And one of the guys we sponsored her on the 70th anniversary of D-Day when we were there. So funny, went out to Omaha Beach, and he came out of a plane, parachute out of a plane tandem. And when he landed, a media guy ran up to him and said, "How was that?" He said, "Whew, better than last time. They were shooting at me." These guys, they're great, and they're so humble. So humble of what they accomplished.
It's remarkable. This guy, Henry, who we're going to have on the show, he ultimately becomes a POW and escapes and survives, clearly, the escape. But the person with him didn't. He had to kill people. He had to kill women and children to effect this escape. And it haunts him to this day. And he's like, I'm not a hero. The story is heroic. There's no denying what he did, how he did it, and what he survived.
Oh, there's so many of those stories. Gosh, you have what? You had 15,000 grave sites up there by St. Mary of Glees, all through that area.
Yeah.
And the wife of the D-Day mayor took care of those grave sites all of those years.
Right.
And then when the French made the agreement with America to have a piece of property or that we could lay ours and create the American cemetery, they gave the availability to those left at home to have their loved ones sent home or sent to the American cemetery. And that's why there's a little over 900 at the cemetery, but there are 15,000 grave sites that are being taken care of every day by the wife of the D-Day mayor and her friends. The heroic things that happened during the war are the people that, like the D-Day mayor, the heroic things she did to take care of these kids and make contact with the families left home. So they had a contact, they had a relationship with their loved one through the wife of the D-Day mayor.
When did it's funny, we have all these things that kind of tie to, how you've lived and your experience. We just had John Lee Hooker Jr. on the show, another person who's like, your dad is a legend, So when did you realize your dad was great? And I'm going to say this before we get to that answer. I love these stories about kids these days where their mom or dad are super famous. Like I think Miranda Lambert is one of these people. And they're like, what does your mommy do? My mommy does laundry. What's her hobby? Cleaning the house. It's just like these kids have no idea, how impactful their parents are. When did you realize your dad was not just a good dad, but, great.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I tell people this, that I was Jane Wyman's son, because my generation, we were all raised in boarding schools. I mean, that was the way it was. We were all raised in boarding schools. At 6 years old, I was out of the house. People used to say, when did you leave home? I was 6. That's when I left home for the first time.
That's how it was.
Because that's the way it was. And everybody had nannies, everybody had maids, and so on and so forth. But every Saturday when I was home, my dad would pick me up in front of the house at 333 South Beverly Glen, and we'd ride out to the ranch. And my dad would regale me with stories of history. He would tell me, he would sing every song of every military organization known to mankind, Up, Up, and Away, all of these things. And he would regale me with these stories. My dad was a great storyteller. He's one of these people, if you asked him what time it was, he'd tell you how the watch was made.
Yeah.
So you kind of went, oh, I don't know if I'm going to ask him a question today. But those are the great, that was my dad great. Right. Because that was him being a dad. You know, when you become president of the United States, you know, a lot of other people suck out the time.
Yeah, you're dad to a lot of people.
Yeah, you're dad. You got a lot of people on the plate. But those days, the best days of my dad were prior to politics and after politics, because you're able to spend that time with him out at the ranch, riding horses, swimming, shooting ground squirrels, you know, all the things that we would do at the ranch together, which was absolutely tremendous. And I love it because I got the stories of my dad. I saw that he was a builder and what have you. But up until basically 1984, I'm sorry, 1964, I was Jane Wyman's kid because she was the biggie. She won an Academy Award for Best Actress. She had Best Picture with Ray Milland, Lost Weekend. Best Song with Bing Crosby. People don't remember In the Cool, Cool, Cool of the Evening. That song won Best Song back in 1951. As I said, her handprints, footprints, Grandma's Chinese, 2 stars, and what have you. So she was the cat's meow. Dad gave the speech, A Time for Choosing, for Barry Goldwater in 1964. And seriously, I went from being Jane Wyman's son to Ronald Reagan's son in less than 24 hours. Less than 24 hours.
He is the most recent president that has the speeches where you can talk about, then he gave this speech. Then just because he was so incredible at that part of the job. You know, we've not had someone as eloquent as him and as talented at delivering it as him since. I mean, there were any number look, slipping the Shirley Bonds. We can do this all day where these incredible things come out, and you could pull any speech out of the woodwork and listen to it, and you will laugh at the right time, and you will cry at the right time. Yeah. And you could take the Time for Choosing, and prior to the virus, because nobody ever had that before, really. But you take the Time for Choosing, just change the numbers, and that speech plays today. Right.
That speech plays today, like it was yesterday afternoon. And that was really, how great he was at that. But he never lost sight. He was probably one of the most humble people you will ever want to meet and know. He wasn't full of himself. When I take people out to the ranch and do a ranch tour with them, because Young America's Foundation bought that in 1998 from Nancy, and they use it as a way to raise money to help conservatives on high school and college campuses. So I do a lot of things with them speaking. And people go out to the ranch, they expect to see this huge ranch. Pictures of world leaders and all this. No, you walk into the ranch house and it's like 1,200 square feet, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe 15 if you stretch it. That he built on most of it. He did.
Right.
And you go there and you look at and you say, oh, there's horses on the wall. There's not world leaders, there's horses. Yeah. Why? He was a rancher.
Yeah.
That's what was important to him. You go into his bedroom, and in the bedroom they got twin beds. Talk about humble. Twin beds. They're tied together with the straps that you would use in your garden. You know what I'm talking about? Those ties?
Yep.
Because Nancy liked it was comfortable for his wife, Nancy.
Yeah.
But the bed was too short for my dad.
Yeah.
But he wanted to make sure his wife was happy. So at the end of his side of the bed, he put a little cushion table and a cushion so his feet have a place to rest off the bed. So Nancy's comfortable. And you see that, you go like, really? This is the guy who could have done, and no, just the humility and the humbleness of my dad was just really, really amazing to sit there and watch. So to be able to go out and do things in his name, whether it's sending scholarships to the men and women on the Reagan, and to be able to go to the Reagan like I have and share stories with these kids on the ship, so they get to know about the guy whose name's on the back of the ship, and to be able to do a brick project. And here's a guy in Hollywood, he was legally blind. Really, he one of the first ones to wear contact lenses, but he wanted to be in the Army.
Right.
From being in the cavalry, but he had to pass an eye exam. So what does he do? He goes out and he memorizes the eye chart. And so when he goes in for his eye exam in the military, they say, okay, Reagan, read line B. D-B-O-Q-R. That's it, you're in. He couldn't see it.
Yeah.
But he had memorized the chart so that he could get into the military. Then he ended up doing 300, training films to the military.
Right.
One of them was doing paratroop training and all these things. So that's how he served. And ultimately, he retires as a captain. They asked him to stay on and become a major. And he says, no. He says, the major, that rank is for someone who can go overseas and fight on the front lines, not somebody who can't. Give that to someone else. So instead of retiring as a major, he retires as a captain, and the major is given to somebody else overseas. He didn't know who, but it went overseas. Who would do that? But he did that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's neat that you get to do this. It's neat that you get to support the Reagan Legacy Foundation. Just for anybody who wants to understand where to go to get these things, obviously on the live screen, it's scrolling across. I'm going to put the things in there. But if you have any questions, hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. I will send you the links. And don't forget, like for $250 or $500 for the bigger one, you can support a World War II veteran. If you don't have one in your family, hey, they'll give you one, and you'll be able to put your brick out there, and it might be something. Well, it will be something very special for generations to come. It's anywhere. Like when you go to the 9/11 at Ground Zero and you see all the names, you can put your finger on the name, or the Vietnam Memorial, where you can go up and rub a name. It's that kind of experience, and I love that you're doing it. I wanted to ask you, because you've got such a richness in your experience of life, and you've seen your pop and everything. When he talked about the shining city on the hill, and just saying those words made me choke up a little bit, because I do believe that this is. I know this is a great nation. I've served, and I've been around the world. I've talked to thousands of people who live in conflict zones, because that was my job, right? And not everybody, but almost always, if they wanted opportunity, they wanted to come here. I want to come to the United States. And I love that we're that, but I'll be damned if we can convince ourselves that we're this beacon of opportunity. If we don't believe it, are we still the shining city on the hill, do you think?
Yeah, we are the shining city on the hill. We just have to find it. And you're right. We don't educate any longer. We don't lift up America. We find ways to step on America. I tell stories of being in Berlin, where we have a Ronald Reagan Center we opened at the Checkpoint Charlie Museum back on the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And now there's a plaque in the ground commemorating my dad's speech that he gave.
Another speech.
Yeah, another speech. And I ran into a kid, a young high school student there, and I said, he's standing on where the bricks are, outlining where the wall was. And I said, what do you know about the Berlin Wall? He said, well, the Americans put it up to keep the communists out of their sector. And I went, well, we've done a great job of education here.
Jesus.
You know what happens too often? We expect someone else to educate our kids. We send them to school and think maybe they'll educate them there. Well, they're not. We have to do the educating. we have to do the education and tell them about the greatness of America and tell them about the shining city of the hill that the rest of the world looks at to in fact come here to get that opportunity to be able to shine like everybody else. And that's what's important. If you leave with that, we've got to be the ones who are going to do it. We can't count on someone else to educate the next generation about the greatness of America, the greatness of those who are serving now, or served in Afghanistan, or served in any of these wars that we have, these ongoing wars. These are young men and women who are willing to give up their lives so that you and I could do this on a regular basis. And they need to be uplifted and to shine the light on them, especially during this period of time. But all year long, we got to think about these people because they're the ones that made it available to us to be able to do. And I think that's why my wife Colleen, my daughter Ashley, our son Cameron, are really involved and proud that, they had a grandfather, I had a father, and Colleen had a father-in-law that really, didn't pretend he loved America. He loved America. So that's why we start the Walkway to Victory. The walkwaytovictory.com or the bricks or Reagan Legacy Foundation.org to keep that going. Because again, if I'm not doing it, then who's going to do that? Who's going to keep the Reagan name going? And my sister Maureen, dying of melanoma back in 2001, we had that brother-sister talk a couple of months from the end at the hospital, St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. And she asked me, she said, Michael, if there ever comes a time that you can get out of radio, will you promise me that you will? I said, why? Somebody's got to carry on the legacy of our father. Someone's got to educate people on the greatness of our dad. Will you promise me? Tough for me. Will you promise me you'll do it? That's why I walked away in 2009, because I could. And I've been really working on this wholeheartedly since 2009 to really educate people on who he was, but keep his name alive on the USS Ronald Reagan, Normandy, France, Berlin, wherever, and let people partake and be part of that.
Yeah. We almost had, and we just missed him by not even a week or two. We almost had John Barletta on the show, another guy that loved your dad and worked with him and served with him for years. And just for the audience's sake, he wrote a great book called Riding with Reagan. He was an actual true horseman like your father was. And in the Secret Service, that wasn't a thing that they had anticipated, to have this, this old Western star that can ride a horse better than anybody. Except for John. John's like, I'll ride with you, but he actually could. Oh. So their story that he tells, look, you only need a couple of these points where you go, wait a second. Everybody seems to love your dad, and they all say the same things. Genuine. I mean, look, we all knew back then, like they always talked about your dad working at the ranch, but you can't see it or understand it. But John describes it, always beating back bush and describing how big the place, all these things. And that's when I was like, God, as much as people are critical of him, I think the person that he was remarkable. And here you are talking about it. And I love that you do it. Thanks for making that sacrifice. Thanks for making that change in your life.
It's my fault. I bought him his first chainsaw. After I won the Opera World Championship in 1967, you might remember, you had McCullough Oil Company owned Lake Havasu. They made chainsaws.
Yeah.
And I went on a tour to promote chainsaws, and I got one for Dad for Christmas. It was a Power Mac 6 chainsaw. Nancy called me up the next Christmas and said, typical woman, do they have bigger ones? I said, yes, Dad, they have bigger ones. Can you give me the number of somebody to call? Your father needs a bigger chainsaw. So she got him a chainsaw for the next one in 1968. But again, the stories John tells, and John was a great guy. His ashes were spread at Rancho del Cielo, by the way, and just a great guy. Great stories, and the things they had to train these Secret Service agents with the tasseled shoes, right? And the whole thing. By the way, you got to put on boots and ride a horse now, or the jackalopes. Dad had jackalopes, a set of jackalopes in the bar area of the house, and the Secret Service, the first time they take a tour, they see this, they say, "Well, Mr. President, what are these?" My dad said, "Well, they're jackalopes." Well, what are jackalopes?
Yes.
You don't know about jackalopes? No. They look like rabbits with horns. I don't know if you've ever seen them. And he says, "Well, they live up here, and they come out at night. And if your guys are out there protecting the house and stuff during the night, you might want to protect yourself from the waist down, because if they see you and they see a light, they'll come in and they'll hit you with those horns, and it really hurts." I go, "Really?" "Yes." "Yeah." And so if you went out and checked my dad's ranch that night, Dad goes out and the Secret Service agents have got cardboard wrapped around their both legs.
Oh my God.
From the waist all the way down to the ankles to protect themselves being run over by jackalopes in the middle of the night at Rancho del Cielo. So Dad was he was a great storyteller and a great sense of humor, and he just got the Secret Service, nailed him on that one.
Yeah. I mean, your dad was shot in the chest and cracking jokes. Come on.
He's great. He was great, but that's how he deflected you.
Yeah.
He absolutely deflected you. And we usually, like at the library every year on his birthday, they always have a guest speaker come up and speak. And really, a couple of years ago was Sam Donaldson.
Yeah.
And he tells great Ronald Reagan stories. And you just go through that. Or Mikhail Gorbachev going to Eureka College, speaking at Eureka College. These people you think didn't like Ronald Reagan, no, they kind of did like Ronald. They loved him. And it really shows when you talk to these people. And because Dad, when he walked into a room, he shook hands with everybody on the way in and everybody on the way out. And everybody who ever met him will tell you, "I thought I was his best friend."
Yeah.
And when he's talking to you, you were his best friend. He wasn't like so many politicians who are shaking you with one hand, looking over your shoulder at the money guy on the corner, trying to get, I got to get to him next.
Yeah.
No, he spent time with you. I mean, Nancy used to have to get a hook to hook him, get him out of there. "We got to go," because he spent all night.
Yeah. If you guys look on the screen, and I'll have this in the beginning of the show notes, walkwaytofreedom.com. That's where you can go and buy
Walkway to Victory.
I'm sorry. Victory. Yep. I said it wrong. I'm reading it. I read it wrong. Walkwaytovictory.com. And you can also go to the Reagan Legacy Foundation.org and Projects Normandy Memorial Big Program. You can find all of those things there. So make sure that if you're into supporting this, which gosh, you got to be, because how incredible is this? These World War II stories, they're going away. These guys every day. There's less and less of these guys. I don't even know. Are there any Pearl Harbor folk left? I think the last one just passed away. I think so. Yeah.
I think the last one just passed away. Yeah. It's incredible. It's that what these men did and women, what they did, and what they were willing to do and what they were willing to give for America. Because of them, they kept it shining.
Yeah. Hey, I got a question for you. What is it? 5 years later, the Korean War starts. But we don't have the same reverence for it. We don't have the same, like, we know about Vietnam, we know about World War II, but the Korean War, these guys are some of the same guys, even, but they fought in both. They're all in their 80s, but we just don't have the same. They just don't have the same, prestige, I guess you would say. Why do you think that is?
Because because they ended a draw.
Okay.
It was a draw. There was the only one that won there was the UN.
Right.
UN made it a draw.
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate. See, a lot of these guys fought in most all of them. You were talking about the Battle of the Bulge. I remember sponsoring one of the guys to go back for the 70th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge, and and so they were getting ready and put the date on the calendar when they would go. And he said, I really don't want to go on the 70th anniversary. Why? He said, can we go like in August or September? Why? because when I was there the first time, it was really cold. And I'm a lot older now. I don't want to go back to that cold. Can we go? Can we say it's the 70th anniversary, but not go when it's 20 below?
Yeah.
It's nice. Yeah. So it's great because that's the kind of the humor some of these guys have. Tell you about what was going on with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's part of it. I think part of it
stories
is
are remarkable. Like, what's that?
Go back because it was a draw. But my father, who was governor. He was the first. He was the guy that really opened the door to the Vietnam vets. He's the one that brought John McCain. He honored John McCain at our house and all of those things when they came out of Vietnam. He was the one that brought him in. That's how he built his relationship with John McCain way back in the day. Because when everybody else was kind of running different directions and didn't know what to do, he opened the door, said, "Come on in," and thank you. He thanked them, and they never forgot that either.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I just want to cover the basics here one more time. Walkway to victory.com, Reagan Legacy Foundation. This is where you can get more information on what Michael's doing. Look, we're trying to support the World War II veterans that are still with us in particular, but also protect their legacy with these things. I love your work with the when you have a ship of people to take care of, just for the audience, there's 5,000 people on a ship, 5,000. And so there's a lot of money that you have to raise up for these families. Like when I look at my time in service, you could thank me for my service, but my daughter, for the most part, didn't have a dad growing up because I was gone all the time. Mm-hmm. And so these kind of things, these little things where you're able to say, hey, make sure that this family has this extra bit of money for whatever it's going to be. These are important things, and I'm really glad that you're doing it, because if you didn't, literally, no one would do that.
And to go on a ship with my dad, they have a little museum there, which is really nice. So I'm able to tell them kind of about the museum. The captain, because they're every 2 years they switch out the captain. His government work. I always try and take a guest with me if I can, and I took a friend of mine, Peter Cullen, before the Reagan left for Tokyo a couple of years ago, and I don't know if you know who Peter Cullen is. Peter Cullen is also known as Optimus Prime.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. He was also, it's Optimus Prime, which is the latest genre of Peter Cullen and what have you. And I took him on the ship. And I said, Peter, say a few words. These kids, you have 5,000 kids on the hangar bay deck, right?
Yes.
So I'm talking to him, giving stories about my dad. And I said, you're just a friend of mine, Peter Cullen, to you. You might know him as Optimus Prime. And everybody just, oh my God. And so Peter gets done speaking almost. He turns to me and says, should I? I said, Peter, what do you mean, should you? And you have to. And he turns and goes, roll out. And you saw 5,000 kids just go nuts.
Yeah.
And and I have pictures of basically everybody on the ship wrapped around Peter Cullen. And to be able to take friends of mine like that down there, and these kids when they did their book at the end of the year, the ships do, like here's the year in retrospect, they had like 3 pages just on Peter and his visit to USS Ronald Reagan.
When you go on the Reagan and you go up to the bridge and you see the captain, are you like, it's kind of slow, this boat, And then the land speed records all have their hats. Do you guys have that in water speed records?
Yeah, well, no, it's interesting. No, we don't. Well, they do have water speed records, things of that nature. A friend of mine got killed trying to set the record on Lake Tahoe back in the 1960s, Lee Taylor. You don't really have hats like that, but going upstairs with the captain on the USS Ronald Reagan is really something. But I mean, shot off the deck.
Oh.
From 0 to 180 and 2.0. It's landing on the deck, being shot off the deck of a carrier is amazing to be able to experience that level and to be there and see these kids. I mean, young kids on the deck of the USS Ronald Reagan, and ship. You have planes going off, planes landing, sorties being done, and again, these kids go out and give of themselves, so be able to. Oh, and that's another thing with the penny profits. from the brick project that comes in, after putting them in the ground and shipping them and all that kind of stuff. Any profits is put into the scholarship program. So the money just keeps on working. It isn't like, oh, the brick only costs you $150 or whatever, and you keep 100. No. If there's 100 left over, or 75 left over, or 25 left over, it goes into the fund that produces scholarships for the men and women on the USS Ronald Reagan. Nobody's paid. It's just all the money goes out.
Oh, I love it. Do you ever do the Captain Stillman from Stripes and you trip and you're like, have that removed? It's my damn boat.
No, but it's nice having your name on the back of an aircraft carrier.
What is that like?
It's really kind of cool, to be we were there for the christening. I did the first move aboard with the ship, and the captain invited me to do the first move aboard. I did that. So we've been with the Reagan all the way through it, from the christening, all the way through, and it's it really kind of cool. Yeah, I got names on the back of an aircraft carrier, and to be able to do that. So it's, it's really neat. I think the last time I was on the ship, I went to Tokyo to be on the ship to pass out scholarships. I told them, I said, you used to be in San Diego, you were a train ride. Yeah. Now you're an awful long plane ride to get here. But I was getting ready after I did all that, spent the day on the ship. I was leaving the ship, and a young female sailor ran, Mr. Reagan, Mr. Reagan, Mr. Reagan. I turned around, and she said, tears in her eyes. I'll probably have them too. She said, I want to thank you for the many times you visited our ship. She says, this is the 5th time I've been on the ship when you've come and visited, and I'm retiring and going back to Texas, and I'm leaving tomorrow off the ship. I'm so glad I got to see you. But thank you from all of us for the time you give us on the USS Ronald Reagan. And I miss the ship not being in San Diego, where I could go down there on a regular basis and see them. Now she's over in Tokyo, Japan, but she's there for a reason. She was sent there by Obama because of North Korea. She heads up the 7th Fleet, and she's doing important work.
When a carrier group shows up, the U.S. is not playing around. It changes the attitudes of all of the countries and reduces the necessity for war, because there's a lot of energy when those things come up. And it's like your dad's still doing his job, It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. I remember the captain. I was talking to the captain when they were getting ready to leave San Diego and go to Tokyo, and tell me you're going to keep an eye on North Korea. And he said, we really have enough on this ship to make North Korea kind of disappear.
Yeah.
We don't need anybody else, but we've got a good group with us and what have you. Oh, it is those aircraft carriers are important. I mean, thank God that we're getting the other one up and running now and going back out. They had the COVID virus on it.
Yeah.
And was it the Lincoln? Or
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt out there. It's just, they do important work out there. And when they show up, peace can break out.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Well, that's the Teddy Roosevelt motto, right? So, hey, one other real quick question about that. You must go through so many emotions as you get ready to go to or leave the ship. I mean, from everything, from just all of it, memories. What is that like as you either get there or leave? Like, what are some of those things that you're hit with? Because it's got to be special for you.
I love getting on the ship and doing the meet and greet I do with. My dad taught me the same thing. I do the same thing. Everybody I see, I shake hands with and what have you. And I love saying to the kid, I look forward to saying, are you brown? Are you blue? Are you purple? Are you white? Are you yellow? What's your color? So I know, so I know where they are and what they do on the ship and what have you. I love doing that. And they tell me, and meeting the young ones and just the excitement, meet the newbie, because you get a lot of newbies, and you know what I'm talking about. And you get the newbies on, you see this, seriously, you see this frail young man or young woman who's maybe is proud. And you're looking at them, you're going, really? And you know what they're going to be doing. And you go back a year later, and they're WWE. I mean, they can just take you apart. You say, what happened to that frail little boy, young man or young woman that I met a year ago or 2 years ago? Now look at you. Yeah, and it's so to be able to see them, but see them twice, or that one sailor 5 times, to be able to do that, meet the new captain and what have you, and see the Red Room, because they've got the Red Room, which is based on Nancy and what have you, like the Red Room at the White House. So to be able to see that, and then when you leave, you kind of miss it and say, gosh, I wish I could spend more time, on her and doing overnight again, because overnights are really kind of cool on the ship. My son went out a couple of years ago and flew to Hawaii with his uncle. And when the ship was coming back, as they always do, they stopped in Honolulu, and he caught the ship in Honolulu, did the 6 days back to San Diego, which was really great. So you got to see 6 days of, air shows. The USS Ronald Reagan, which is kind of one of those things the aircraft carriers do when they return home. They'll stop in Honolulu, bring on families, so it's family members and what have you, get the cruise back to the United States with not U.S. where but come back to Coronado, and that was kind of cool to have my son be able to do that. Spend 6 days on the Reagan overnight like that.
Well, listen, you've been fantastic. It's such a great honor to talk to you and hear about your dad and all of the incredible work you're doing with the Reagan Legacy Foundation. It's just, like that sailor said to you, man, from all of us out here, thank you for doing that. We all need to find some kind of charitable effort and charter. You don't need to have your dad be a world leader. You can just simply say, I'm going to take care of these people and make sure that they have something more than what they have today. And thank you so much for doing that and committing your life to your dad's memory, because, he's a great man, and I love that you're out there doing it. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, stand by for a sec.